M had inherited Dr. Dre's beef by signing with Dre. M was now the prodigy of Dr. Dre. Dre left Death Row. Suge didn't like that. Dre getting back on. Got this white rapper that's ended up being the best rapper in the fucking world. Suge had a problem with it. He was like, you know what? That kid need to be with us over at Death Row. And M was cut off on his way to his seat, and all these guys in red shirts surrounded him. And I'm looking at M's face, and I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, shit, something ain't right.
What was Eminem saying during all this?
He was like, man,
shit.
M was like, this motherfucker's trying to kill us, man. What they trying to do? What do they want? I don't understand. What do they want? I say, hey, man, they want you to sign with them instead of being with Dre.
The beef between Eminem and Suge Knight is a story you don't hear often. It's the tale of the white guy against the boogeyman who had some of the toughest gangster rappers quaking in their boots. You see, during the 90s, Suge was the guy that almost everyone was scared of. I mean, you had this huge 6'2" bearded guy who weighed about 300 pounds, was also a member of the mob Piru Bloods. So it's easy to see why anyone would be intimidated by that. And that's not all. Suge attended Linwood High School, where he played football, was also a track star. Suge was a standout talent, and by the time he finished high school, almost every major college football scout wanted him on their team. That's how good Suge was. This man played college football and even made it to the NFL. I mean, look at all that hair. This truly was a different lifetime for Suge Knight. But even during this period, the streets was a distraction for Suge. So his coach told him not to sign with the University of Southern California because it's too close to Compton, where the hood business would have been a problem for him. Therefore, Suge signed for the University of Las Vegas, and a year later, he signed with the LA Rams. But his coach in LA felt Suge wasn't good enough. Suge was benched, and he didn't take this lightly. He decided to quit football, and although his family pleaded with him to stay on the team, Suge's mind was already made up. This was when Suge decided to ditch the hair and go bald, and I'm guessing this was when the gangster fully took over. Suge became a concert promoter and then a bodyguard, but he only did this job for about 2 years. In 1989, Suge started his own music publishing company, and after some time, Suge earned a reputation as a fixer. When Suge's client, Mario Johnson, had a problem with Vanilla Ice over royalties for the song Ice Ice Baby, Suge fixed the problem.
Suge took me out on the balcony, started talking to me personally. On the balcony, high above, like 15 floors. He had me look over the edge, show me how high I was up there.
You scared?
I needed to wear a diaper on that day. I was very scared.
This would be the first of Suge's roles as a fixer. When rapper The DOC wanted to leave Ruthless Records, he reached out to Suge to help him get out of his deal. Through DOC, Suge met other members of NWA, and this is when Suge found out that Dr. Dre wanted to leave NWA as well. Once again, Suge fixed DOC and Dr. Dre's problem. They got out of their deal, and this was how one of the most iconic labels in hip-hop history began. Death Row Records began in 1991.
Death Row's in the house.
Death Row can be bigger than Motown, or Sony, or Warner Brothers.
Death Row's gonna be the biggest record company there is.
The master plan was to take over the world.
And in case you haven't noticed, Suge had managed to finesse his way from a bodyguard to becoming a label executive. Suge's label was the label other record labels wanted to be like. In a space of 6 years, Death Row released 3 of the greatest hip-hop albums ever. It's the kind of run that no other label has been able to replicate. Death Row released The Chronic in December 1992, and in November 1993 they dropped another classic. Snoop Dogg released Doggy Style, and the album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Tupac was released from jail in 1995, and he would go on to become one of the biggest stars of the 90s. Pac's All Eyes on Me was another undeniable classic released by Death Row Records. By now, Suge Knight was one of the most powerful men in the industry, and there were truly no limits to what Suge could have become. But you could take the homie out of the hood, you can't take the hood out of the homie. Suge still hadn't left his violent ways behind. For any of his employees that made mistakes, Suge dealt with them in a not-so-executive manner. He allegedly beat an employee before sitting on him in the bathroom, and in another scenario, he made another employee drink the urine of everyone in the room. Suge also had various problems with the law, and he was sentenced to jail several times. And whenever he had the chance, he was also dissing other label executives.
And one other thing I'd like to say, any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, and don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing, come to Death Row.
After some time, Death Row became known for violence because most of the people that Suge hired were either gang members or someone with a shady background. And because of this, Dr. Dre decided to leave Death Row. The official statement stated that Dr. Dre left because of a contract dispute. But various reports state that Dre left because he didn't like the image that Death Row now had, and he didn't like the people that were now associated with the label.
All these people around me, how many of them do I really need?
Suge ensured that Dre left the label without any of his publishing or masters. The only thing Dre got was his walking papers.
You have a multi-million-dollar company, maybe worth $1 billion or so, and you own it 100% and don't have a partner, and you didn't have to give him nothing. But his walking papers, that's great.
A lot more than the public knows. The record business is to me, the worst business you can be involved in, because any Joe Schmo from off the block can make a record, which means you're going to have more cutthroats involved and more shiesty people.
Dr. Dre also wanted nothing to do with the East Coast, West Coast beef. Instead, he just wanted to make music and work with even the East rappers.
It was mostly just the way the studio was, and that's where I have to spend most of my time.
This East Coast, West Coast nonsense is just getting ridiculous, It's just like another form of black-on-black crime.
Dre left Death Row and started Aftermath Records. Luckily for Dre, one of the first artists he signed would become one of the most successful rappers of the 2000s. Dre signed Eminem to Aftermath on the 9th of March 1998. The label started slowly, but it really took off after Eminem was signed. M would go on to sell more records than anyone could have imagined. And Suge wasn't happy with this. Because as Aftermath began thriving, Death Row was on a downward spiral. Tupac had unfortunately been murdered, and Death Row never reached the heights they reached before. Suge felt Eminem should belong to Death Row Records. So at the Source Awards in 2001, Suge decided to let M feel his presence. M performed with D12 at the show.
I've been so many places, I've seen so many faces, but nothing compares to these blue and yellow purple hills. I climbed the highest mountain, once or twice, but who's counting? But nothing compares to these blue and yellow purple hills. Cool, calm.
But at this show, the artists were not allowed to sit with their bodyguards, and this left Eminem exposed. According to Eminem's former bodyguard, Big Nas, M found himself surrounded by Suge's goons at the show.
M was walking to his seat, I'm standing off to the side, and M was cut off on his way to his seat, and all these guys in red shirts surrounded him. And I'm looking at M's face, and I'm looking at these guys, I'm like, shit, something ain't right.
Just in case you don't know, the red shirt is a sign of the Bloods, the gang that Suge and his homies belonged to. M was in trouble, and Nas had to run down to help him before he was harmed. Big Nas stated that the men came with a message from Suge Knight.
You see all these guys talking about Death Row, motherfucker, Death Row. Death Row, motherfucker, Death Row. So by this time, I cut in, I step in front of M, I push the guys back. I'm like, yo, what the fuck going on here, man? He said, Death Row, motherfucker, this Death Row about, this Death Row life. I was like, Death Row, what does it got to do with him? He said, hey, man, Suge sent him a message.
M was caught in the middle of the beef between Suge and Dr. Dre. He was Dre's protege, and he had inherited his beef.
So I got him up out of there, took him backstage. So now, backstage, I'm calling Dre's bodyguards. I called Dre, look, man, we got a serious issue, man. Death Row is here, and they trying to fight. They trying to do whatever they gonna do.
After M presented an award to DMX, Big Nas was able to finally get him out of the building.
What was Eminem saying during all this?
He was like, man,
oh shit.
Em was like, this motherfucker's trying to kill us, man. What they trying to do? What do they want? I don't understand. What do they want? I say, hey, man, they want you to sign with them instead of being with Dre.
But what makes this situation even more confusing is that even though he wanted M on death row, Suge claimed Eminem's music means nothing to him.
What do you think of Eminem? Is that what do you think of white rap?
Well, you know, I don't. See, one thing about something, the ghetto is colorblind on a sense. If you really from the ghetto and you really doing those things you rapping about, and you talking about, I can respect that.
Right.
If somebody else writing your rhymes, somebody else is you telling somebody else's story, that really don't mean nothing to me.
Still, this wouldn't be the last time that Eminem and Suge Knight will try to intimidate Eminem. After some time, Eminem signed his own protege, 50 Cent. 50 was very successful like his mentor, and while shooting the video for 50 Cent's Inda Club, Suge Knight came round.
Yeah, like I was like, what happened? I remember the time, actually, it's funny because he showed up to the In the Club video shoot. He came, it was like, Suge's outside, Suge's outside. Everybody like, he was running, dropping shit, like, man, everybody going, I'm in front of the camera like this.
When Suge Knight wants to make his presence felt, he likes to arrive in style. This time he arrived at the video shoot with over 30 Mexicans.
Suge came in with 30 Mexicans, like you said, which is weird, you know what I'm saying?
He always wrong with the Mexicans.
You know what I'm saying? And I just remember Smurf and 50 was like, what's up, man? What you want to do?
Bang him.
Yeah, Bang was like, what you want to do? And Suge looked at him, and he took a puff of his cigar, and he blew it out, and he did like this, and he left.
However, Eminem was also present at the video shoot.
How about it? He came with the 50 Mexicans, and M was out there. M didn't back down. They said niggas came outside. He came with 50 Mexicans.
Suge has since been put behind bars for multiple offenses. While for Eminem, he's gone on to become not only one of the biggest rappers, but also one of the biggest artists in the world.